Some may argue that the addition of more werewolves to a horror film does not improve said film. In this case, it does.
Hey! Bite me!
Werewolves is the latest feature from director Stephen C. Miller, who also helmed the 2012 remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night. They just called that one Silent Night, though. He brings a similar action horror balls-to-the-wall feel to this flick with the absolutely jacked Frank Grillo in the lead role. Is this new take on the werewolf concept fresh, or does it borrow a little too much from another horror franchise? Well, let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. I want to place like the littlest, tiniest spoiler warning before we get into this video. Kind of, but also not really. There's a certain aspect of this movie that kind of reinvents the whole werewolf idea that I have to get into. It's like one of the biggest things I want to talk about with this movie, so I've carefully crafted this review to specifically not give any plot points away, but I do want to talk a little bit about this cool new invention. So without further ado, let's get right on into it. Werewolves can best be described as the Purge, but, you know, with werewolves. The beginning of this movie wastes no time with its nearly the same setup either. Immediately, we're dropped into a familiar world facing similar trials and tribulations. Essentially, what ended up happening here is a year ago, a supermoon turned a bunch of people into werewolves. Anyone that looked right into the goddamn thing. Characters are preparing for the next supermoon in various ways, whether it's arming themselves with guns or hunkering down for the night behind electrified fences. The government is testing a new product called Moonscreen that's supposed to block the moon's rays from entering your eyes, so the infected don't change. This ends up being a questionable plot point a little later on, but we'll come back to that. Finally, Frank Grillo has to leave his deceased brother's family to assist in testing the product upon the arrival of another supermoon. With mostly practical werewolves running around and some gnarly kills for both beasts and people, this is a surefire blast for creature feature fans all around the world. Although I had a few issues with this film, I had a really good time watching this one early. We have had a ton of poignant thrillers this year that brilliantly pushed their message, like The Substance, Mr. Crockett, and Heretic. But Werewolves is for those who want to escape into 80s action horror bliss. There's a big guy with a machine gun killing werewolves. That is all you need to think about while watching this flick. You might be surprised to hear that with the very clear The Purge influence, but this film experiments with that formula a bit to make something new. It's The Purge without anything to say. You still have this lawless night of people running around with machine guns fighting each other. But then there's also a ton of werewolves.
Ah! A cube of wolves! My only fear!
Dump the social commentary, throw in wolves. Based on the comments I get on a lot of my other videos, I know there's an audience for that. The setup with our main characters is, sure, a little basic, but I don't think it needed to be any more than that. Basically, Frank Grillo's brother died a year ago, and he takes care of their family, because he never had a family of his own. You've definitely heard this little chestnut before. It's tried and true, even if it is a little tiring at times. The first 10 minutes or so feels a lot like a Purge film, even featuring the same actor from the best of those movies preparing for the night in a similar way, but we get this experimental scene that immediately sets itself apart. Frank Grillo, whose name is Wesley Marshall in this film, but I don't give a I'm calling him Frank Grillo, leaves his brother's family to go work on this Moonscreen stuff. On his way there, he sees a man holding a sign that reads, "Only the evil turn," which is surprisingly excellent and subtle world building here. Like I said earlier, most of this film is just a big guy with a machine gun shooting werewolves, which is a ton of fun, but there's some subtle world building in these moments like this that really make this film stand apart from other B-movies just like it. While the film never really focuses on this, it makes you think that maybe religious groups around the world have their own agenda that they want to push based on this supermoon event. Maybe that extends farther than religious groups too. Maybe a bunch of different people have their own theories about what the hell is actually going on here. That one shot made me think about all of that. So subtle, so thought-provoking, excellent stuff there. Inside of this laboratory warehouse thing, Frank and his team use the Moonscreen on 3 test subjects who turned the previous year. They keep them in cages and one screams to be let out. It's a little freaky and kinky, but it's an experiment that needs to happen to save the world. As Mr. Spock once said, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Live long and prosper. They open up the ceiling and put the test subjects under the moonlight, and at first, the serum works. They stay human for a while until it wears off. Like I said earlier, I'm not gonna spoil any plot points about this film, but y'all knew that these characters were gonna turn if you saw the trailer. Let's roll that clip back.
We hope to see if this mutation can be blocked.
Basically what they set up here is that this moon screen stuff works for a limited time in your eyes, which is a really cool movie invention. However, it does result in some frustrating plot points. Later on, our main characters run into some other people who are wearing masks specifically so they can keep the moonlight out of their eyes. Our main characters just use the moon screen, which, like, I understand that, but again, it only lasts a limited time. Why not wear something else just in case? There's a sequence in this movie where they end up fighting werewolves outside under the moon, and like the serum is wearing off. They wear these watches that kind of tell them how much longer they have, and they have to reapply it so they don't transform themselves. It's just a little frustrating because it's like, dude, just get some glasses or something, man. I don't know. I do, however, love the idea of the protagonists having to evade moonlight getting in their eyes so they don't change into the beasts. It feels like a reverse of vampires staying out of the sun so they don't burn up, but now that's a threat to the good guys. Anytime you can reinvent the rules with an established monster like that has me very interested. It reminds me of the terror segment in VHS 94 where the vampires, when they're exposed to sunlight, just explode.
Stop moving!
Y'all thought Abigail invented that this year. Oh no, 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 no. That goes to Ryan Prose from VHS 94, my dudes. At least that's the first time I've seen that approached. Maybe there's a better example from something before 2021, but I don't know. Basically what I'm trying to say is that if you're a genre fan, you're gonna get a kick out of this one. The in-camera effects done by Alec Gillis are crazy impressive and feel very Dog Soldiers inspired, which I really dug. For those who don't know, Alec worked for the legendary special effects artist Stan Winston, creating creatures for the Alien, Predator, and Pumpkinhead franchises. He reteams with creature performer Dane DeLiegro in this film that he previously worked with on Hulu's Prey just a couple of years ago. Dane played the Predator in that film, Evil Chauncey in Imaginary from earlier this year, and a friggin' werewolf in this movie. Now, this film still features a balance between VFX and practicals, but it's that imbalance that makes this one work really well. If there's a close-up shot or people fighting werewolves in this movie, which is the majority of it, it's done practically. But if there's someone just in the background running away from Frank Grillo with a machine gun, maybe it's done with VFX. Overall though, all the effects in this movie look really good. I have no complaints. Across the board, this is some of the best werewolf effects I've seen in a movie in a very long time. Again, Dog Soldiers, probably the last movie that looked this good. Speaking of those little touches of world building, there's also a scene in this movie where Frank Grillo comes across a little girl who is turned. I think there's a point in the film where you kind of forget that the werewolves are just people that accidentally changed into these monsters. In this scene, you see Frank struggle to pull the trigger, and I won't tell you what happens, but it's really well done. I really love how it reminds you of these emotional issues these characters face in this world. It adds so much depth to a movie that doesn't necessarily need it, but I appreciate it. I hate to be a negative Nancy, but I do have some gripes with the story, however. The ending of this flick falls apart a little bit and basically copies another popular monster movie's ending. I won't say what movie, but if you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the moment you see it done in this film, you're gonna know.
Nobody's gonna know.
They're gonna know.
How would they know?
Unlike how this movie takes the Purge concept and kind of twists it in its own unique way, it reinvents the ending from this said other film and doesn't necessarily do anything fresh with it. It results in a having your cake and eating it too kind of ending, which ends up being a bit of an eye roller. Besides that, however, this movie is so much fun and feels like a throwback film to the 80s with a ton of one-liners. If you liked that bite me line from earlier, there's one in the middle of this flick that is so unbelievably funny it had me cracking up. Frank Grillo's line deliveries in this are Commando-esque. I loved it. Look out for that one about halfway through. If you're looking for a quick 90-minute escape from reality with a really fun monster movie, Werewolves is the film for you. It can be a little too pastiche at times for me, assembling some of the best scenes from other movies and TV shows together for a new story, but it really stands out from the other big films that came out this year. It's nice to have something like Werewolves to break up the release schedule from 2024. Going back to what I was saying earlier, there have been a lot of heavy-handed thrillers this year that have hit on some social messages. You might have walked away from some of these really depressed too. Coming off of Werewolves, I had a jolt of energy and a lot of happiness. If you go out to the theaters to see this one this weekend, take the family, take some friends, go with the group, and you'll have a great time. Before we wrap up today's video, I just posted a massive deep dive on Michael Dougherty's Krampus over on my new page, KillJoy Jake Retro. Go subscribe and check out that new video. I worked really hard on it, and you might learn a thing or two about that 2015 film. Thank you to everyone who has already already subscribed. Are you guys excited for Werewolves? And to my friends out there who have already seen it, did you like it or not? Leave me something about it in the comments below. Please subscribe, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.